If I commit to a person, I am committing to work through everything. Whatever happens between us, we're going to try and work through it. And that's like loving resiliently for me.
Hello, my LGBTQTs, and welcome back to another episode of A Jaded Gay. I'm Rob Lovelace, and today I am a non-jaded gay because I finally finished transcribing all of my old podcast episodes, all 100 and however many of them at this point. So glad it's done. I've been working on it since like July last year, and then as I transcribed them, I was turning them into blog posts. So I'm all caught up. So now I just transcribe the episodes as they come out and turn them into blog posts, and I have blog posts scheduled like 2 a week until February of 2026. So hopefully you enjoy all those when you see the posts on Instagram. Anyway, from blog posts to memoirs, today I am very excited to have a special guest joining us to talk all about his experiences in a throuple and ethical non-monogamy. And we've kind of talked about non-monogamous relationships in the past. I believe it was April 2023, I had my friend Eric on to talk about his experiences in a polyamorous relationship. So I'm really excited that we get to explore those dynamics again in today's episode. But before we do, tarot time. So today we drew the Emperor, which is a major arcana card. As a reminder, minor arcana cards are more about the day-to-day things, but major arcana cards signify something big happening in our lives. And the Emperor is like pure masculine energy, so this card is very action-oriented. It's number 4 in the major arcana, and in numerology, 4 is tied to structure, stability, and our foundation. And when we draw the Emperor, it's reminding us of our personal power and using it to take inspired action. This card signifies that we have a clear vision of what we want to create, and we're taking the action to achieve those things. The Emperor is also seen as someone wise with plenty of knowledge, so it's important that we're taking action based off of our own personal power and intellect instead of reacting to fear. And by implementing boundaries and rules, we can create calm out of chaos. And with that in mind, I am very excited to welcome today's guest. He is the author of Deconstructing Us, My Trouble with a Throuple. Please welcome Jeff Hudson. Hi, Jeff. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Rob.
Of course. Thanks for coming on today. I'm very excited to talk all about thruples, ethical non-monogamy, your new book, which covers it all, and we will be getting into that shortly. But before we do, can you tell all the listeners a little bit about yourself, how you identify, your pronouns, career, background, all that fun stuff?
So I am a former television producer. I produced TV for most of my life. I started out like in the talk show circuit, Sally Jesse Raphael, Montel Williams, Ricky Lake. Then I did a lot of dating shows. And then I came out to California, did some design shows. And my big probably claim to fame, I was the showrunner for a show called The Doctors, which was a daytime medical talk show with a bunch of doctors on the panel, which I actually won an Emmy for that one. I'm also now writing, and that is sort of my true passion right now. And I do a bunch of other little things out here in Palm Springs, but I used to live between LA and Palm Springs, but now I kind of call Palm Springs my permanent home.
Awesome. And I like to ask all my guests today, are you a jaded or non-jaded gay, and why?
I am, by the way, my pronoun is he, him. You did ask me that. So, just to let you know. I was actually just thinking about that before we jumped on together. I think everybody has levels of jadedness, right? People always say, "Oh, I'm not jaded." Yes, you are. Everybody's jaded. We all have a little bit of jaded something in our bloodstream. If you lie about that, you're definitely not telling the truth, because we all have a little bit of that. I think that throughout the course of my life, I've been more jaded than others. And I think I was probably more jaded when I was a little bit younger. I think as I age and I evolve and I experience more, especially in the gay community and the gay world, I think I've become a little less jaded. But yeah, I mean, I definitely have some jaded genes.
Fair enough. I feel like jaded kind of comes with the territory of being gay sometimes.
100%. I agree.
Well, hopefully we can alleviate some of the jadedness today talking all about your new memoir. Again, congratulations on that coming out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It is titled Deconstructing Us, My Trouble with a Throuple, which again talks about your experiences with being in a throuple, ethical non-monogamy. So kicking off the show, I tend to always love a vocabulary lesson. So according to Simply Psychology, ethical non-monogamy is a relationship structure where all involved parties consent to have multiple romantic or sexual relationships with honesty and open communication. And unlike cheating, all actions are above board and ethically conducted with respect for everyone's boundaries and feelings. So obviously that could be kind of clinical sounding. So with all that in mind, can you tell us about your personal definition of ethical non-monogamy and also how it intersects with thruples and polyamory?
Absolutely. The one word that really stuck out to me with what you just said is consent. For me, ethical non-monogamy is when two people in a committed relationship decide that they're going to allow relations with other people. And listen, there is an array of non-monogamy, right? Some people allow, their partners to kiss other people. Some people allow people to, have foreplay with other people. I have friends who are in non-monogamous relationships where they hook up with other people, but they both have to be present, right? Some people do don't ask, don't tell. For me, I like to know everything. Like I want to know what's going on, what you did, whether or not you're going to go do it, or you did it already. For me, a lot of it is like that's like a turn on for me, like to know what my partner's doing and all that kind of stuff. And I also think it actually helps your relationship because you actually learn things about your partner from their extracurricular activities that you may not know from being with them on your own. The big thing, though, with ethical non monogamy is both parties truly need to be okay with what is going on, and they have to agree with what level of non monogamy they're going to do. If one person is jealous, it's not going to work. You both have to trust each other and you both have to be communicating all the time about what you're doing. And then in terms of non-monogamy, relating to thruples and polyamory, I think it's like taking non-monogamy to the next level. Because when you open up that gate to that third person, that's when emotions get involved. For me, non-monogamy is sex. It's hooking up and knowing that that's all it is, and I'm coming home to my person. But in a throuple, when you invite that third person in, you're dealing with emotions now. You're dealing with feelings.
And obviously, open relationships, polyamory, that's not exclusive to the LGBTQ plus community. I'm sure it happens with straight people as well. But a lot of times, if you go on a dating app, you'll see somebody saying that they're in an open relationship or polyamorous relationship. So I was wondering, what do you think draws gay men in particular to explore ethical non-monogamy?
I think that, listen, I think gay men are sexual creatures, but I think it's not really about just gay men. I think it's men in general. I personally truly believe, and some people may disagree with me on this, but I think men generally more so than women can separate emotions from sex. I think that men could go out, have sex, come home and to their person and forget about what just happened. And I think, women are more, they want to be more emotional. They want to get to know the person. They want to go on dates or whatever the case may be. For gay men, we all know it's so easy. We could jump on Grindr, we could jump on Scruff, we could jump on Sniffies. In 15 minutes from now, I could have somebody over here and we could be hooking up, And I truly believe this, and I say this all the time. If straight men could hook up as easily as gay men could, they would be doing it as much as we are, And whoever doesn't want to face that truth is not in touch with reality. So I think it's really a man thing, to be honest with you. That's why we're drawn to that.
What are some common misconceptions about ethical non-monogamy?
I have three. The first misconception, I think, about non-monogamy is that people automatically think like we're all sluts and whores, okay? And that's not the case. Just because you're in a non-monogamous relationship doesn't mean you're going out and having sex every other day with somebody new. And maybe you are. Who cares, right? It's like, if that's your thing, go do it. I'm very sexually liberated. I'm very sex positive. Um, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're out, sleeping around every 2 seconds of the day. The big misconception is I think that people think that if you're in a non-monogamous relationship, that there's something wrong with the current relationship that you're in. Like there's something malfunctioning. And that could be the case for some people, but I don't really truly believe that at all. My partner and I were open for years and years and years, and my relationship just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger as we went along during non-monogamy. You don't have to have something wrong or some malfunction in your relationship to be doing that. And then lastly, I think that people automatically think that it's an excuse to cheat. And, for me, I think it's like, forget about that. Just be honest with each other. You don't have to cheat if you talk about it. Just tell your partner what you want, share your feelings, communicate. And even if they say no, that conversation has now started, right? And that other person who may have said no might start thinking about it more and more and more. And eventually 6 months down the road, a year down the road, it may become a thing that you guys ultimately do.
And I think because of those misconceptions, there can definitely be some judgment or stereotypes placed upon those who are either in a throuple, a polyamorous relationship, or, participate in ethical non-monogamy. So with that in mind, how does society's perception of monogamy impact those who choose to live differently?
I think we are living in a very good time right now for this. Compared to how it was 50 years ago, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I would have been very afraid to talk about being non-monogamous with other people. But I would say about 15 years ago, I started talking about it. I started seeing it more on TV. I started seeing it more in films. And now you see it all the time. And when I started talking about it with my gay friends and my straight friends, what I noticed is that people started to engage in the conversation. They got very curious. They started asking questions. And these conversations would go on for a long time, right? It's not just like, oh, one question. It would turn into an hour conversation. And what I learned about that is the more they asked, I realized that they're actually interested. Like this is something that maybe they thought about and want to bring up to their partner or their husband or their wife. So I think we're at a stage right now where it's becoming a very part of structure of life and it's becoming very accepting.
Earlier, you told us how you and your partner have been open for a while. So can you walk us through how your throuple dynamic began? And was it something you and your partner had discussed for a while prior to entering that relationship?
Yeah. So my partner and I became fully open about 9 years into our relationship. And for the most part, whenever we hooked up with other people, it was separate. And that wasn't necessarily because we didn't want to be together to hook up with other people. He was just very into a very different type of guy. Like he was really into twinks, which doesn't make any sense to me because I'm not a twink at all. And I'm very much more into sort of rugged guys, beefy guys. So we can never really agree on who to hook up with or who to have a threesome with or whatever. Occasionally it happened, but not so much. But we always talked about like sort of finding somebody that was a regular for both of us. And 22 years into our relationship, it was around our 22nd anniversary. We went to Mexico for about 10 days. And I met this guy on Grindr. My partner was down at the beach, and the guy came over, and I couldn't even hardly even breathe. He was my perfect specimen of a human being. And my partner was down at the beach, and I called him. I said, "Hey, I just I just want to remind you, don't come up until I'm done. I'll let you know when I'm ready." So I hooked up with this guy. When it was all over, I felt like I had this like innate feeling that I needed to introduce him to my partner. I had a feeling that he might even like him. He was beefy and he was sort of more my type, but there was something very um, pretty about him as well. There was something very calm about him, very nice about him. So they met, and sure enough, they hit it off, and we ended up spending, pretty much that whole week together in Mexico. So that's kind of how the catalyst of it all started.
And what were the biggest challenges in integrating a third person into a long-term relationship?
I mean, one of the biggest challenges just for this throuple was that this guy that we met lived in Canada. He lived in the middle of nowhere, Canada. So he was a good 2 flights from where we lived. And, there was that challenge of, you know, being together, but we did make it work. And when we weren't together, we were incessantly on FaceTimes, text exchanges, and all that kind of stuff. So the three of us always communicating. But what I will say, the biggest challenge for us, and I think it would be for any throuple, is that it's no longer a two-person relationship. And in all reality, it's not even a three-person relationship, okay? What you have going on here is there's a relationship between me and my partner going on. There's a relationship between me and the new guy. There's a relationship between the new guy and my partner. And then there's the relationship between all three of us. So there's really actually 4 relationships going on. So it's like going from this, one partner to this overwhelming amount of relationships going on, and how to navigate and all that kind of stuff. And I would say the other thing that sort of really threw me in the beginning, well, not so much in the beginning, but as we started progressing, was when it started to become really real. I was like, oh my God, I'm allowing somebody into my relationship and giving them equal footing into a relationship that I have cultivated for 22 years. My guy knows everything about me, and vice versa. We have secondhand language where we ask each other questions and get each other's opinions and share. And now bringing that sort of third opinion, a third person who has to, be a part of the equation, that's a lot, and especially after you've been in a twosome for so long.
And from when you first met in Mexico to, the FaceTimes, the texting, bringing them around more, finding time to hang out, how did the throuple evolve over time?
We went home from Mexico, and within 4 days, I was on a plane to the middle of nowhere, Canada, because I knew that the more time we let any time pass, that the dynamic of this possibly even happening. Not that I was even in the mind frame that we were going to become a throuple a week later, but I knew that we had to sort of like, let's keep in touch. Plus, I wasn't ready to like part ways with him. So I went up to Canada and spent a long weekend with him. And then after that, he started coming down every weekend. They turn into long weekends, sometimes a week here and there. And it just very right from the start, this throuple was intense. It was like we all dove in, and we were all sort of moving in that direction really fast. As we started to evolve, I would say that I was the first one, possibly the only one out of the three, that started to get red flags. I was starting to feel like maybe there was a different kind of twosome forming between them. And even though they weren't admitting to it, I innately felt it. Like I felt it deep within me. Because he would often say things to me and do things when he was alone with me that he wouldn't say or do in front of my partner. So that sort of threw me a little bit, but that's how we kind of evolved. And it just kept getting more intense and more intense and more intense until it kind of didn't anymore, you know?
So, how long did the throuple last overall? And then how did you kind of address that fear that there was more of a twosome forming between your partner and the person you had invited into the relationship?
So shockingly, like I said, my initial relationship was 22 years, pretty much to the day when we met this third guy. 2.5 months later, in a very shocking way, they left me and are now together as a couple.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure that is a lot to handle. So, how did you come to terms with that after everything had ended from that?
I think it was both unproductive and unsustainable to show up to just marches and protests without having a deeper involvement and learning protest songs and getting involved as a chant leader and a song leader and an organizer and a graphic designer, and really lending my work to the movement for collective liberation has given me so much more of a sense of purpose and community.
A lot of it has to do with this book. So right after the relationship ended, I was literally, it was like I had been hit by lightning. And not hit by lightning once, but twice, because, you know, losing my partner of 22 years is getting hit by lightning. And then I also very much loved the third person. So it was like being hit by lightning twice, you know? And a couple months after it ended, I couldn't function. I couldn't think. I couldn't focus. My mind was going. So I jumped on a plane. I thought about. I know this sounds really corny, but I thought about Julia Roberts from Eat, Pray, Love. I thought about Diane Lane from Under the Tuscan Sun, and I was like, well, if they could go over there and deal with a traumatic breakup, then why can't I? So I jumped on a plane and I went to Italy, and I didn't really have any intention of writing at the point. But when I got to Italy, I decided that I was going to start journaling. So I went to 4 cities. I went to Milan, I went to Bologna, I went to Florence, and I went to Rome. And after each city, I decided, you know what? I'm going to post my entire experience on Facebook. And for the first time in my life, I revealed so much about what was going on in me on Facebook that I couldn't actually believe that I was doing it. I spent my whole TV career interviewing people and finding stories, compelling stories, and countless thousands of hours of this kind of thing. And so I turned the tables on myself, and I decided to share what I was going through. And in each city, I sort of had a word that I went through. So in Milan, it was transition. In Bologna, it was discovery. In Florence, it was loyalty. And Rome, it was deliverance. And I got so much feedback on Facebook about what I was revealing. People were thanking me and saying, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing. So this inspired me to keep writing. So I kept journaling, and I came home and I kept writing and writing and writing. Partly because I had so many thoughts about what had occurred over the last 3 months that I needed to just get it all out in one section, like one thing, right? So before I knew it, I had, this much paper, and I was like, I have a book. I think I have a book here. So I started having people read it. And sure enough, a lot of people said, you know what, Jeff, you have a book, you should probably publish it. So that's kind of what inspired me to do that.
How did this experience of that throuple reshape your views on love, commitment, and non-monogamy?
Wow. I will say that at this point in my life, and I'm not so sure it's about the throuple, but I don't think I will ever, ever, ever be in a relationship again where it's not non-monogamous. I will always want an open relationship. So if anybody wants to date me and, moving forward in my life, they're going to know it's going to be open. It's just what I want to do. It's just where I'm at. And I could pretty much honestly say that I would never get into a throuple again, although who knows, that could change. But I don't think I would ever do that again. But as far as commitment, for me, love comes with resiliency. And what I mean by that is I'm a very loyal person in terms of when I commit to a partner, I'm not talking about like being open and, or, making mistakes and doing whatever. I'm talking about if I commit to a person, I am committing to work through everything. Like, whatever happens between us, we're going to try and work through it. And that's like loving resiliently for me. You know, Even if my partner cheated or I ended up cheating or whatever the case may be, we could still work through it. If we ended up getting into a throuple and it didn't work, we have to figure out a way to work through it. So, and I've always been that way, and I was that way with my former partner, which is something I really struggled with. That my person, just in the blink of an eye, just got up and walked away, and didn't even remotely want to give me the opportunity or us the opportunity to work through this. It never really made sense to me. So as far as that goes, my focus is on doing my best to always commit to the person and working through whatever we're faced with.
And you previously talked about how while you traveled through Italy, there were those 4 themes that came up for each site you stayed at. So as you were writing your book, again, that's Deconstructing Us, My Trouble with the Throuple, what did you learn about yourself going through that?
I will tell you that I don't think that I'm ever going to be the same person that I was prior to the relationship ending. Um, I, you know, I had my whole life sort of completed. The puzzle was all there. I saw the future. I knew how it was going to be with my partner, possibly now with this third guy. I had the whole plan. And overnight, that puzzle just fell apart, right? All the pieces were now in back 100 little pieces. And I had to figure out a way to sort of re-put this puzzle together, and look at my life from a completely different perspective. I had to realize that the trajectory that I was on is not the trajectory that is happening anymore. So now I know this is cliche. I know we've all heard this a gazillion times. I really am trying and doing my best to live in the moment. I try not to look too far ahead anymore because I was a TV producer, it's in my blood. So like I was always, 3 weeks ahead, 5 weeks ahead, a year ahead. And I really am trying now to, here's today. Let me enjoy today. What's going to happen tomorrow? We don't need to worry about that right now. Just enjoy the moment. So that's kind of where I'm at in my headspace right now.
And what do you hope readers take away from the memoir?
I have a lot of things in the book that I really, truly, some really valuable lessons and awakenings that I do hope to pass along. A couple, though, I really want to, I hope people can see the difference between ethical non-monogamy and what works and what could be self-destructive. So I hope that as far as that goes, people can see that. I also am, and I did this because I think the conversation between men about breaking up and the loss of love is not something we talk about often. Men are supposed to be strong. We're not supposed to cry. We're supposed to get over it. Like if we break up with somebody or somebody breaks up with us, oh, you'll move on. You'll find some. I even heard that at the very beginning of this. There's a lot of people understood, but a lot of people you were like, oh, you're going to get over this. Maybe I'm not going to get over this. It's 22 years of my life. And there were a lot of nights of like crying and incessantly and bawling to the point where I couldn't breathe. And, as a culture, gay men, straight men, bi men, whatever, I don't think we talk about and allow ourselves to be vulnerable about loss of love, and what it feels like to hurt that way, and I really hope that people read that and see the tools that I sort of got along my journey that helped me get through my journey. And finally, I talk a lot about it in the book, is really listening to your inner whisper. I think we sort of like that gut feeling kind of thing. But I think we all have this inner whisper, that little person on your shoulder or somebody whispering in your ear about what feels right and what doesn't feel right. If something, and for me, everything felt right in the beginning. Everything felt exciting and new and exhilarating, and like I'm in a throuple, and like I have fallen in love the second time in my life. But then my inner whisper started telling me things, and I should have figured out a way to listen to that whisper earlier on, and dealing with it and how to deal with it. So I'm hoping that people will pick up on that as well.
What advice would you give to someone who may be in a monogamous relationship, but they and their partner are considering opening it up?
A couple things. I would say that communication is paramount. I think that being honest about what you're doing is truly key. You got to talk to your partner about what you're doing and what you want to do and all that kind of stuff. If you decide that it's going to be a don't ask, don't tell situation, that's still communicating. You've both agreed to be don't ask, don't tell. If not, I think that you should always talk about what you're doing and who you're doing it with and when and how and all that stuff. I would also suggest that if you're not sure, like if you're worried about it, I would say start off with doing it together, like inviting, if you're going to have a threesome, invite the person over so you're both present. So you're both experiencing the same person at the same time. And I would also consider, because this is how I did it too, I would also consider doing it, at lower levels, right? Don't just jump to full on intercourse and full on, group sex or foursomes or whatever. Like do little stuff, some foreplay and see how that goes. And if that goes well between the both of you, then move it up, do oral, whatever the case may be, and kind of advance it. You don't have to jump into it and go, hit a home run right away.
And connecting it back to the tarot, the Emperor, again, this card is pure masculine energy. It's very action-oriented, and it's reminding us to take inspired action from our own personal power within. And being the fourth card in the Major Arcana, it's really reminding us of our structures and having a stable, strong foundation. If you think about it, emperors traditionally were seen as leaders. They implemented laws and rules on how they wanted to govern what they ruled. And I think we can see a lot of those connections in our discussion with Jeff today. We live in a time where our relationships don't have to adhere to what the traditional heteronormative societal expectations were from the 1950s. So whether that means being in a monogamous relationship, being in an ethically non-monogamous relationship, being in a polyamorous relationship, we have the ability to create what feels right to us. And while that can be a lot of gray area, it's really important that we're reminded of our own personal power to use our voice in that situation. Just like the Emperor, we need to implement those boundaries and those rules so that we feel comfortable operating within the relationships we are, regardless of what type of relationship that is. It's also important that we're really logical. Like we said, the Emperor is somebody who's seen as being very wise and having a ton of knowledge. So we don't want to react emotionally and out of fear. We want to really think things through logically and make sound decisions based off of what we know is going to serve us best going forward. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on today. This was really great to talk about. As we're coming to the end of the episode here, can you read an excerpt from Deconstructing Us?
Sure. I'm gonna read you a little part like when I first met the third guy, whose name is Lucas. Well, his name is Lucas in the book. I had to change his name. Lucas alerted me that he was on his way over, walking from the rental he was sharing with his girlfriend. He checked in about halfway through his truck and declared he was sweating profusely from the humidity. Ugh, not my favorite thing, sweat that is, but I didn't think too much of it. I just wanted to meet this guy who managed to charm me silly during our textual flirtations. I was beyond intrigued, and I innately knew I was going to surrender my entire body to this guy. There was something about him, the way he communicated, and his pictures that I knew I wanted to go all the way. When Lucas arrived, I had to go fetch him in the lobby. The elevator door opened, and there he was standing across the expansive room. The smile, the eyes, the body language all matched the Adonis I wanted him to be. He seriously took my breath away. I almost didn't even know how to proceed, but I went with the basic. "Hey, Lucas," I nervously blurted out from across the room. "Hey, Jeff," he responded, his grin widening. We shook hands and went straight for the elevator. My body was shaking with so many hormonal triggers, so the only way I could stop the tremors was to lunge at him, which I did. I went in for our first kiss, his perspiration and everything else that came with it. My sweat phobia dehydrated quickly. When we got to the room, I suggested he take a quick shower to cool off. Even though I would have gotten through all his body drench, I was still skeeved out by it. Better to rinse all that away since there was a shower nearby. As Lucas cleaned up, I called David to profess how insanely hot Lucas was and that I couldn't believe this was happening, and to remind him not to come back to the room until I was ready. I also mentioned that I really wanted to take the submissive role, and David gave me his blessing. An easy blessing it was as I look back at it now. I was literally requesting to bottom with a total stranger, and David said okay, as if I was just ordering an extra appetizer to accompany one of our takeout dinners. I went to check on Lucas in the bathroom, and he was already out of the shower, but I noticed that he was putting his clothes back on. "Why are your clothes on?" I asked. I presumed he had changed his mind and he was preparing to leave, but then Lucas smiled bashfully. I knew it was his way of saying, "I'm a gentleman and I'm just trying to do this properly." It was a statement that didn't need to be spoken, but it was felt.
That is a passage from Deconstructing Us, My Trouble with the Throuple by Jeff Hudson. Jeff, thanks again so much for coming on today. Can you tell the listeners where they can buy your book and learn more about you?
My book, there's a bunch of links for my ebook and for my print book on my social media, jhudgolden, at jhudgolden. But it's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, but there's a link to all of them if you go to my Instagram, jhudgolden.
And all those links are in the show notes, so definitely go out and get the book after you're done listening to this. And you know the drill. If you have any questions or feedback for this episode, you can reach out to me, Rob, at ajadedgay.com. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars only. I greatly appreciate it. For more information on this topic, our guests, resources, merchandise, socials, blog posts, all that fun stuff, you can visit the website at jadedgay.com. You can connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, SoundCloud, and YouTube at A Jaded Gay Pod. You can follow me personally, Rob Loveless, on Instagram at Rob_Loveless. Also, if you're feeling generous, consider supporting the podcast on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That gets you instant access to episodes ad-free a day early, plus exclusive monthly bonus content. Or if you just want to purchase those monthly bonus episodes, you can do so for $3 each. Also, as a reminder, if you sign up for the Patreon during this month, in addition to the goodies you'll get in the tier you sign up for, you'll also get a free A Jaded Gay gift from me since we are celebrating the 3rd anniversary of the podcast. So why not sign up? And if you're scared of commitment, don't worry. I get it. You can make a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee for any dollar amount, and both the Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee are at A Jaded Gay Pod. And remember, every day is all we have, so you gotta make your own happiness. Bye!
as far as it relates to thruples and polyamory, I think of course there's a fly here. As far as it relates to oh my, do you see that fly flying around me?
I actually thought it was a bird or something at first because it flew
Okay.
right towards the camera. So I saw this big black blur come at the camera.
Of course, like this is probably my grandmother being like, "What are you doing?" Um,